Redfall. Yeah, I want my 77 gigs back. I haven't seen an identity crisis this bad since Jason Bourne got shot and fell off a boat. To put it simply, Redfall has absolutely no idea what it wants to be, but what it is above everything else is boring. A massive thank you and shout out to 2game.com for sponsoring today's video and providing me a key for Redfall. I highly recommend you check them out using the link below for some great discounts on many different titles, and make sure to use code Punggles for an additional 5% off any purchase, including Redfall if you want to experience this pain. And while I have you, only 1% of you watching this are actually subscribed, so if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Now, let's stab some suckers. Let's talk about Redfall, Arkane's latest title and one that is already being absolutely destroyed all over the internet, and after playing it I can confirm it kinda deserves it. For this review I will be using footage from just the opening hours of the game to avoid spoilers, but given the narrative and story of Redfall you really shouldn't care at all. I certainly stopped caring about the story maybe less than 2 hours in, as Redfall presents some of the most generic and dated dialogue and cutscenes I've seen in a long time.
You must be Layla. I'm sorry you got wrapped up in all this. We all got wrapped up, didn't we?
It's a shame really, because I think the setting has huge potential. Redfall takes place in the town of Redfall, Massachusetts, and it's ripe for a Stephen King-esque horror story, but the lack of weight to the narrative, the confused and conflicting tones, and general bugginess and jank just results in an underwhelming mess. Again, Redfall really has no idea what it's trying to do or be. Is it a co-op horde shooter like Left 4 Dead? It has way too few enemies and a boring empty world. Is it a narrative-driven shooter? The story is sidelined and the stakes just don't exist. Is it an open world FPS with RPG elements like Far Cry? The gunplay's generic and lazy, and the skill trees are incredibly dull outside of a few interesting signature abilities. And it's just definitely not up to par with Arkane's other titles, which present unique and immersive sim gameplay elements. I remember the pre-release marketing for Redfall also seemed confused as to what it wanted to be, and while at the time I thought maybe they were just playing coy with the true gameplay loop, it's now apparent it was because there was no interesting loop to be shown at all. While I haven't finished it yet so far, about 95% of my playtime has been spent running back and forth through the same environments on fetch quests. I did try to go in with an open mind, but the world of Redfall is unforgivably boring, empty, and lifeless. I was shocked at how often I'd just be running through an entire area and not see a single enemy or area of interest. It's like they forgot to actually finish the game and populate it with enemies. You'll find the random straggling group with 1 or 2 vampires hanging around, but that's it. Seriously, I cannot overstate how empty and lifeless the world of Redfall actually is. Early in the game I found a sporting goods store, and when I opened the door, an alarm went off. I waited for the hordes of enemies to swarm me, but nope, nothing. It was completely pointless. Nothing came, and I looted boring loot, then just kinda left. It's actually somewhat incredible to witness how sparse this world actually is when it comes to fun and engaging encounters. The gunplay and enemies provide absolutely no significant challenges or fun, and there's just nothing there at all. The AI is breathtakingly stupid and barely seems able to even recognize that the player is there, let alone engage in any meaningful way. Even the tougher enemies and vampires can be exploited so easily by just breaking line of sight or simply moving behind an object that I often was trying to make encounters more engaging by rushing in guns blazing and forcing combat. However, combat isn't exactly Arkane's strong point, which is sad given this game is meant to primarily be a co-op shooter. But I could forgive somewhat subpar shooting mechanics if the character's unique abilities or interesting ways to engage with the environments made up for it. You know, the things that Arkane is renowned for, but they just don't at all. I tried 3 of the characters a bit, and each one just feels like a fourth of the character of another Arkane title, with a lot of their skills and traits just kind of making me go, eh, is that it? Trying to lure enemies into traps or using the abilities in pretty much any interesting ways and exercise in futility, as again, enemies barely respond to anything happening around them. The gameplay is just not up to snuff for a AAA title, and the story and narrative don't make up for it. Visually, Redfall is a mixed bag. I like some of the environments, and again, this setting has a lot of potential, especially with its autumn seasonal effects. There are times, especially in the linear missions, when the spooky atmosphere is realized and the lighting makes for an interesting backdrop, but other times Redfall is straight up ugly, with suspect textures and some shockingly bad detail art, like these incredible fish flopping assets. I really struggled to take the world of Redfall seriously, as the character models are stylized to a point of ugliness as well. I'm not asking for ultra realism. In fact, I generally love Arkane's distinct visual style, seen in the gorgeous art of Dishonored 2, but in Redfall, we have, well, whatever this is. It again reinforces the idea that Redfall doesn't know what it wants to be, with some realistic and dark locations with splatters of blood and chewed on bodies mixed with silly quips and goofy models. There's just so many little details, even down to the lack of a looting animation, that makes Redfall feel like an early access title selling for $25. Definitely not a $70 AAA experience with quality that players should expect. That being said, the audio of Redfall is probably the highest quality aspect of it for me, actually. I really enjoy the creepy ambient sounds, and as the vampires shriek and it echoes down the empty streets, well, they're always empty, it's pretty awesome sounding. Gun sounds are actually really meaty, and in some cases, like the stake launcher, extremely satisfying. But much like the visuals, the voice acting is a mixed bag, with some voice actors sounding completely bored with the situation, even though, you know, they're in a town overran by vampires. It's okay, has a diverse cast of characters, but the constant quips and jokes, they wear pretty thin, especially when the game tries to establish a darker tone at the same time. The soundtrack is actually a really interesting choice, mixing more traditional horror type strings and acoustics with almost hip-hop like beats and electronic synths that I actually really enjoyed. Performance on PC is pretty abysmal, with significant stuttering, pop-in, freezing, all of the above, and more during my time with the game so far. The visual fidelity just doesn't seem to warrant how poorly it runs at all. The pop-in is especially egregious in the open world areas, and it's not surprising to me that this is unoptimized, given Arkane's track record when it comes to PC performance. Overall, this is a pretty quick review, but I'm just not sure how much more I can say about Redfall that hasn't been said already. At one point, there probably was something more here, a spark of creativity and vision that was burned out on the pile of technical constraints and bad gameplay decisions. My assumption is that Redfall was, in concept, a much different game than we received, and was changed in attempts to either monetize or capture a multiplayer audience. I just imagine what Arkane could have done with a semi-open world immersive survival shooter in the world of Redfall, with more intense encounters, more varied enemies, and fully fleshed out abilities. That, plus their signature spectacular level and mission design, could have been something really special, but this is just none of that. I'm not sure exactly what happened or if Arkane's just bleeding talent, but given the reception to Deathloop as well, which was not my favorite, it's not exactly promising for this studio. I would absolutely not recommend Redfall, sadly, not even as a download on Game Pass. The game just lacks so much in so many areas, and I'm not even sure where you could start with patching this thing up. Thanks for watching. Thank you again to 2game.com for sponsoring this video. Let me know your thoughts on Redfall in the comments below if you've played it. Until next time.